Everybody ready?
Whatever.
All right, welcome everybody to the Sherwood City Council, June 17th, 2025 work session. It is 5:33 p.m. We got two items tonight. First is a opioid review discussion, and second item is a police advisory board update. So with that, turn it over to David.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, so we're bringing this back to City Council because I recall at the council bill setting session, even when I brought the supplemental budget, it was requested that we have a discussion on future use of opioid proceeds. So bringing that back for the work session, I put together a little information with the help of Ty and Sebastian. This is more for the, oh, how's this going? Okay. Just a little brief history, more for folks at home. In 2020 or July 2021, State of Oregon reached an agreement, a national lawsuit against 4 companies held manufacturers of prescription opioid liable. The funds can be used for a wide variety of opioid prevention, treatment, and recovery strategies that are listed in the settlement. So far, as of last week, the city's received a little over $144,000. We spent almost $110,000 of that. That stuff I brought it together in the supplemental budget. It was the evidence van. Part of it was grant funded, part of it was opioid. I think it was for the mental health response team. Help to pay for that. We're required to report annually to these to the DOJ here in Oregon, but to some of the other settlement agreements, we have to report to them kind of the use of the opioid proceeds, some of the law firms that represented these manufacturers. We're expected to receive these settlement funds for roughly about 18 years, so you can figure about 2038, 2039.
Same amount of money for 18 years?
What's up?
Approximately the same amount of money for 18, or the balloon in it, or?
No, it's going to be just consistently slowly trickling in. So you look at about 4 to 5 years time, we received about 144,000. So we can kind of expect
Okay.
You know, we're probably going to, I would say anywhere between $400,000 to $500,000, what we could probably expect.
But it goes up and down every year.
Exactly. It does fluctuate a little bit.
There is another pending settlement with Purdue and their related ones that just cleared yesterday. That was over $7 billion for the states to divide. And so that will be added to what we're receiving as well.
Yeah, well, probably, I'm sure Craig will be getting some kind of agreement here soon on, I know some of them were caught up in the court still. So. Approved use of funds is pretty restrictive. We tried to pick out, what could the city use this for potentially, it's Narcan, leadership planning coordination, prevention programs, and you can also use it for support people in treatment and recovery. There's an exhaustive list. There's a lot of services here at the city we don't offer, so it's gonna have to be a whole different discussion if we wanted to really implement a program. Sebastian put together kind of a list of other cities that have received funds, and you can see this first slide, a lot of those cities have not made a decision on how they're going to use those funds.
So you have to make, it says funds dispersed zero, so you have to tell them what you're going to use it for before you get it, or how?
No, it's just, we just have to use it on one of the appropriate.
So what does the funds dispersed mean?
Means as of June 30th, 2024, the city of Sherwood had made.
Fiscal year.
Yeah.
We haven't
This-
spent ours yet.
So it just means we haven't spent it. We have the money, we just haven't spent it.
Yeah, have.
Okay, but I'm just trying to understand.
For
what
that specific year.
Right. Yeah, I was just trying to understand what funds dispersed meant.
Is this based on population or number of drug arrests, or what determines the dollar amount?
It's like population.
It's a population. Yeah.
Okay.
Six street bills, 498,000.
Well, Central Point, I mean, a penny, do they not have anyone living there, or?
I feel like that might be a budget problem where they, correctly or something.
Yeah, so, we made the decision this current fiscal year 24-25. That's why city of Sherwood is showing zero, because this is as of the end of last year. Here's some examples of cities that had used the funds, Fort Dallas first responder retraining or first responder training. That's an approved use. You can see Westland AED machines, St. Helens Sport Canine programs. So there's various uses. Mainly it would be geared towards the PD since they're the ones fighting, the drug opioid fentanyl problems.
Can you go back a little bit?
Yep.
So, looks like down south, a couple cities have been doing some different things. Nonprofits, I assume these are the nonprofits in the community that assist people.
Yep. We had an option, I know it was when K2, the former city manager, he's the one that signed the agreement. We could have just transferred all the money to the county and we could have stayed out of it. But we chose to keep it in-house, try to, and in discussions is, why don't we try to fight the problem within the city boundaries versus giving the money away and seeing it distributed across Washington County?
Assuming the county had a program or stands up a program that we liked, we could still decide to give
Yeah.
annually to that if we wanted to.
You're right. Yep. As I was talking about, some cities that have used this, whether it's for Narcan, partially funding school resource officers, purchase testing machine for fentanyl. You can see like Forest Grove, they transferred their money to Washington County, so. And really, these are just some examples. Now it's just, we're trying to open it up for discussion on what council is thinking, what the thoughts are. I know, Dan, you kind of, you were interested in looking at some various maybe uses of this. I know you expressed that desire. So really, it's kind of just a work session for us to start floating around ideas and trying to see what we could use this future money for. Keep.
I heard there's a possibility the feds are gonna reduce the amount of that is it made available to folks? Is that the feds currently give us? Well, there's no, so
We're okay there, yeah. We can actually go across the Walgreens and get it now.
How much are we spending a year on it?
I mean, I think it's. I wouldn't say less than $500.
Yeah, it's going up significantly in price.
So, because you brought this up, Dan, do you have some thoughts?
Yeah, so when we did the supplemental budget, part of the funds that were requested was to pay for employee pay, which is more operational costs. It was kind of to supplant the budget and supplement in that instance. And I would be more in favor of using this money for non-operational, for like in-house personnel for the city. We just did our budget. We planned all that out. Unless we're adding an additional position specifically for this, I'd be in favor of that. But like just to help with our budget, that doesn't feel like in the spirit of what this money is for. And on that same thing for me, equipment for the police to apprehend people. I'm more of the prevention treatment for using this money than for arresting people, I guess. And so that's where looking at maybe other options for using the money in that regard than for equipment or.
In the budget that's brought forward to us right now, what is this money budgeted for in the 25-26?
We haven't budgeted any of this money for
Okay.
anything in the 25.6, knowing that
Okay,
city council want to have a discussion on that. So right now, it's really just sitting there, and if a decision is made, then we could allocate that and spend it on council's decision.
We're talking about like $35,000 roughly.
Yeah, you're talking, about $35,000 right now. So something where a decision doesn't have to be made right now, but it's something, get the discussion going, because this money over time will start building up again.
Well, and we do have 5 years from when we receive it to either earmark it for something or spend it. And so there is somewhat of budgeting
Flexibility, yeah.
with that, just for county wise. But like we've done with the CEP grants, kind of pooling some money for a larger future thing. I could see us doing it since we don't, from what I understand, don't really have a thing right now that we're wanting to spend this on. Instead of doing these smaller projects, maybe save it for a few years to do a bigger something for our community.
So one follow-up question to what Dan asked, and the police chief might be the one to answer this, but are there any programs? I also implore the education and prevention. It seems like that's probably the cheapest way to prevent an opioid overdose, right? But are there any programs that you know of that are successful in, you know, from a statistics point of view, like, hey, this community implemented this program in elementary schools, and 10 years later, you know, we saw a decrease in opioid, you know what I mean? Like, from what I remember, DARE wasn't a resounding success. If anything, it made people curious about how a drug, so I don't know that there is one or not, but is there anything you know of?
No, there's nothing specific I'm aware of. I hate to say it's relatively new, but the opioid fentanyl crisis is new to us. Obviously, the biggest challenge is just the danger behind it. And I think to Dan's point, and everybody probably at this table, is the educational component of it, is how dangerous this stuff is, how it's evolving. It just seems like it's coming out in a new form continuously because they're getting creative, because obviously they're being tracked and they're being taken out. And so what used to be the standard pill format now is in liquid, now is in different kinds of things that is enticing to the young adults. So I am all in favor of the educational component. The challenge for us is our education is when we're out there dealing with them face to face. We're not going to get anybody to come walk in our door and sit in our community room and have a classroom session about this voluntarily. We've seen what happened in 110, an utter disaster in the fact that we decriminalized all these crimes and said, hey, if you're charged, call this number, we'll give you the help. We know how that went. They've since fixed that, and they now have that deflection program, which we've seen some success in.
Yeah.
Because we're giving them the option, we're holding them accountable, we're getting them into the treatment, which I think is a much better avenue. We don't have that ability here in Sherwood within the court system to do that. So everything we do is through Washington County. I still go back to, we need to be educating. I asked for equipment a few years ago to do that for some public service announcements. It's just been a challenge. As you know, it's a one-person studio that we have with the agency. So trying to coordinate that has been probably our biggest hurdle, but I'd like to do that. I know I did ask for equipment because we have the greatest exposure out there and identifying these things. It is everywhere. It can be on the floor, it can be on Coke cans, it can be anywhere that we become in the area with it, and you know, it can contaminate us pretty quickly. So some of those things I think kind of go hand in hand, but as we've made progress in that area, I'm also along the lines of let's get creative if we can. I know we're in a budget challenge, so it's difficult for us to dedicate a person. Just actually got some numbers recently, you know, an officer just today fully loaded is about $170,000. So I can't pluck somebody because it's going to absorb any and everything. The one thing I do and I would advocate for though is for it to help sustain our mental health response team. We asked for it this last year, it did it. We continue to see great success in this, and I'm going to go back to the fact that those are the first people that are dealing with people in crisis. And we know inherently that there's usually a mental health nexus tied with a drug issue. Yeah. And so if there's anybody that can give resources, if there's anybody that can be an advocate for them and following up with them, it is a team like that. Eugene has a similar team. It escapes me now what they do down there. It's a great team that goes out and it follows up. So just a reminder, NHRT goes out with an officer, but they also follow up the next day, the next week, and they're on a continuous kind of follow-up cycle to make sure that these people are being touched, to give them resources and give them things that they might need. So I guess that's my pitch. If there's anything that we're thinking about, to Dan's point, if there's anything that comes up that's bigger and bolder that we can stow away, I mean, I think that's a great idea. But
Well, and in honesty, and I don't go in these circles, so maybe it's just my naivete, but when you say we've gotta tell people how dangerous it is, I know it's dangerous. But those other things, I don't know, you could have fentanyl on this table right now and I wouldn't know. Right, you know what I mean? Like, I don't, and so part of it is like, well, okay, is this an SRO job to say? I don't know, when I was a kid, I remember they had a suitcase or something that they would show the fake versions and then say, all right, that is the fake, you know, that's fake fentanyl or whatever, but you know what I mean? Like, is that part of it? Is it, I don't know if it's even that big of a problem with, you know, if you had to point an arrow to say, is it a student problem or is it a dental, you know, or a chronic pain problem? Like, again, I don't know where the biggest bang for the buck is on that, for education wise, because maybe it is just SROs get new things, new tools to be able to teach the kids, but if that's not what the biggest problem is.
Go ahead, Renee.
No,
Yeah,
go ahead.
Sorry, Kim.
A couple thoughts that I had, back in Indiana, we used to call that back in Rocks, Indiana, which was tailored towards kids from the age of 4th to 8th grade. But it was prior to what we're dealing with now. What I'm wondering is, well, I'm all in favor of the SRT program, not SRT program, but the MHRT program. The other, what if we were to invest in another SRO that for that particular age group to start educating them on the hazards and dangers of opioids as it continues to ramp up? Is there a reserve officer who could potentially do something like that? And so we focus a community campaign focused on the opioid program for the upper elementary school kids.
Is that the entry point? Like, I know, like, for historical recreational drugs, upper
Used
middle
to be.
school, high school is. For opioids, is that true, or is it more late high school, young adult age?
You know,
Cause it's different than like going and buying a street drug, right? Like, in some way, or no difference at all, I
It's
guess is
being
what I.
found on playgrounds and such
yeah,
too.
it's being found in
Really?
candy,
Like-
shape, colors, Skittle, like.
Sherwood.
Yes.
It's the enticement, I mean, they're looking for the earliest addiction that they can get, it's just historical, that's what they wanna do. I can't say specifically where that threshold is here, I mean, I'm guessing middle school, the problem is social media is our biggest enemy in this, and one of the things, and I appreciate that, Renee, I think the educational component is huge, and if there's another thing I would advocate for is using some money for marketing, getting somebody to come in, a firm to come in, somebody to come in and help us with these PSAs so that we can continually distribute them. Not only at the middle school, but the high school levels, because we need to be in front of them on social media. For us to sit in front of a classroom, you know, they're gonna drown us out.
Yeah.
But the fact that they're attached to their phones, and if we can get just those touch points, you know, often, I think is gonna be impactful. And honestly, I think we're all just grasping at straws here to figure out what we can do and what might be impactful. Granted, you know, if we can save anybody, that's a victory for us.
What social medias are we on?
Well, we're on all platforms.
So
Are you on X?
Kim,
It's a follow-up, I was, brand new question here. So we're on TikTok and Instagram,
As far as the PD, yes, yeah, we try and catch them all.
and I gotta catch them on Facebook.
Yeah, we just know that's where they get their info. We know that's where we're reading about the latest dares. We're all
Adults get their info too.
dying as a result of it, so we know they're there. paying attention.
not in a good way. Yeah.
So I like the media, the marketing, bringing somebody in for that. So my concern is starting any new program, because this money is gonna end. And then how do we continue that? But do we just get what we can out of it until we don't get any more money and then see if we can continue it, if our budget's in a better shape? But the other thing is, unless we're bringing somebody else in, like you said, we can't take staff away right now from our roads and our this and that, although this should be a high priority as well. How do we cover that, you know, without impacting the rest of our services? So I like Renee's idea of, you know, can we bring, well, reservists don't get paid, but, or a retired.
Yeah.
Part-timer, yeah.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
And the 144,000 is how much we've received for the last 5 years.
Yes, it's from the implementation to as of last week.
So we're averaging about $30,000 a year.
That'd be 4 years.
Last year, I think it said we got 60,000 last year.
Yeah.
Well, or that was,
I think it backed up and now
It
it's.
goes up and down, so I just want us to be conscious of,
Yeah.
it's not a huge amount of money or.
I mean, staff, I mean, any kind of hired staff, we know gets pretty expensive pretty quickly. You talked about pushing content on social media, which makes a ton of sense, because you don't, I mean, a lot of that stuff you fire and forget, and you change it out every once in a while. You can manage it with a pretty low time investment once you have the content. Is there content you can just get like off the shelf, like some other, like, there's no reason every police department in the country should have to film their own content on this, right? Like, should pool and.
I haven't looked. I think probably what's prompted me in this is I've had a discussion with our detective that's with the DEA and just understand, I mean, it's no secret, we're in the top of the nation with opioid overdoses. It's not a secret there, so I think for us, we have the unique opportunity to maybe film some of those interactions. Really expose kind of what is happening here, boots on the ground in Oregon, in the Portland metro area versus some generic off the shelf thing.
Maybe we can.
Not opposed to it, but a
Then we
combination.
can sell it.
Huh?
Then we can sell it.
Maybe.
Team up with surrounding agencies, like if everybody pitched in $5,000 or their, you know, whatever the dollar amount.
Yeah.
Was there.
Yeah, if you're talking about the Portland metro area, do something,
Yeah.
collaboratively with whatever PDs you're in good partnerships with, and I like that idea.
Is it legal, is it legal to create a fund that is, the $10,000 in the police? People who are putting a post out, bill against that, and the city person that's putting out a post, bill against that, so that it is essentially, it is part of their job now, but it's not at the expense of, you know what I mean?
You just,
Opioid
their
fund.
time can be billed to the opioid money
Yeah.
instead of the general fund.
That's just funny money, because at the end of the day, it's not like you get that money back on the other fund.
No, I understand, but instead of it being a afterthought of, okay, if I can get to it, I'll do it, instead of, I have to do one post a week as part of my job to do you know what I mean? And we're tracking it because we've got a fund that we're billing against. Again, I like the idea of creating content and reselling, but I don't know if other places are gonna want that. But I also hear that, oh yes, Oregon's number one in this, or in the top, but does that mean Sherwood is in the top of Oregon, right? I want because otherwise I feel like it's just background noise, right? Where people go, oh, that doesn't really match my lived experience. Whereas if you say, oh no, we found this at Stella Olson. You know what I mean? Like that impacts differently than somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, well, it's not a secret, and it's not something we talk about, but we've had fentanyl overdoses in the city last year. We had, I believe, 4 that were as a direct result of opioid.
There was one of my ride-alongs.
Yeah, and so, I mean, that's just deaths that we know of that we could actually tie to fentanyl. When we can do those, we actually are allowed to hand them off to the feds to investigate. It's Lynn bias cases, which then they backtrack to the bigger dealers of that. It is here, it is obviously, our goal is to keep it at a minimum.
Yeah.
And part of that, I think, is staying out in front of it. It's similar to what it was probably 6-7 years ago when a lot of the kids were crushing pills. It was a really big thing of them snorting that and doing those kind of things. It's transitioned now because fentanyl's the latest rage. Unfortunately, they are cutting it into everything that you can imagine, and so I think that's probably the scariest thing out there.
Is there any, we keep talking about fentanyl, is there any other issues with other opioids in our community, or just fentanyl primarily?
That's the biggest one right now. I mean, meth and heroin, they're kind of cyclical. they'll go up and down, but they're always here, they're always around. Marijuana, we know is just kind of the base of all things. And then the alcohol, I mean, but, probably the biggest thing that we need to address is the fentanyl, because that just. It's so deadly. Not only is it just, it's not only killing the kids, but it's killing first responders. It's killing people that are secondary to some of these things accidentally, and so. That's probably
Another
the scariest.
question. Is any of what Justice Center does, that could be somebody there? Where they meet the criteria?
Cause we weren't able to do that in our budget this year. Right?
No,
Justice.
yeah,
The Family Justice Center.
oh, so that,
Piece.
I don't, it doesn't necessarily have, I mean, I guess there's always a drug nexus that can be associated with that, but that's, are you talking about putting money into it?
Yes, my uneloquent question was, is,
Do they qualify?
do they qualify? That's the word.
Oh. I don't know.
Is that a potential?
I haven't heard of anybody talking about that as far as an option. Just gonna ask.
And I wouldn't be opposed to using our funds for programs that might be working elsewhere that serve Sherwood as well.
Yeah.
So we don't we're not creating our own that's
Right.
not gonna be sustainable.
I mean, is that even something that they do on a? Like.
Well,
is it more
a
than
one-time
tertiary,
basis, they're,
right? Like, I mean-
one-time basis, I'm sure they would be happy to take.
Well, yeah, I'm not, sure they'll take our money, I just like, are we really, would it be helping with the opioid crisis, or was it? I mean, I don't know if that's something they deal with every day, once a week, once a month, you know, I think I need to know more
Have all the
information.
Services there. I mean, I just don't know.
I mean, that's not their primary cause, right?
No.
It may be, they may be involved.
Could we make sure the funds that we're using is directed for
Or
them?
or more, to me, it's more like, is there better bang for our buck if we wanna focus this money on being at the opioid
Yeah,
problem
maybe there's a-
specifically?
Drug dealer, you know.
I love the PSA piece though, so, sorry,
No, it's okay, go ahead.
no, I was just saying, I love the PSA
I
option.
like that too. I'm very conscious of, you know, at an average of 30-something thousand a year. You know, be careful about spooling up too much of a program. Is there, for the videos that. I can't remember the officer's name that does those, Paul, yeah, that does those. A lot of that's like, you're just capturing body cam footage and stuff like that, so is there an opportunity, because for. Less than 30,000 a year, you know, we could hire someone like we hire for the, to do our promotion videos for like state of the city and stuff. That could help do the hard work of putting the PSAs together. You know, you just have to provide the footage, that way it's not taking away as much time from an officer.
Well, if you want them to come out and like do some interviews and filming, like you're not gonna just wanna use body
No,
cam.
but I'm just trying to offload all the work.
I totally agree with that part.
Yes.
Like you hire them for a statement of work and then use the rest of the money to do ads on their social media or whatever, or some portion of the money.
And if you combine it with the other efforts we're doing to just capture a lot of that B-roll during the year for promotions and stuff like that, you might even get, you know, economies of scale.
Then we have to figure out a way to measure effectiveness.
Success. But it would be cool if we could find out if the Justice Center might be a.
They don't mention it on the website. We can check with them, but it's about sexual assault and violence and.
It's a subsidiary of drug use.
100%.
That's why I'm
They
wondering.
just don't mention
Yeah.
drug abuse or drug treatment or anything like that. I'm sure they do, but they don't mention it on their website, so.
Dan, do you know how much money the state's getting out of these settlements? I have a feeling it's a lot. What are they doing with that money?
Yeah, 55% of what comes into the state goes to the cities, and 45%, there's a board set up that manages the four things that were discussed at the beginning. What the buckets are for what this is uses, and so there's a governing. Oregon specifically, like our state has set it that way for that other 45% of the funds, so they already have
It employs a bunch of people in Salem.
something.
Cause I heard something somewhere that they were buying, what's the Narcan and stuff like that. Is that getting distributed in the cities, state, or
We're not, no, we're just.
Looking to see what
like something looking good?
Yeah. another option for the education component, potentially partnering with the school district and helping fund like an evidence-based education, kind of like we were talking about, that, you know, has been successful in other school districts.
There have been some that other school districts have used.
Yeah, related to this. And
So I like that, if you could tie the kids into, I mean, because that's where we need the buy-in. Is there, I think so. Is, okay, how what do we need to be saying? How do we need to be getting this
it
across?
doesn't pull an officer, like we have the resources already in the school district to support that potentially.
They still do health classes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Half the students opt out of
Yeah,
that,
opt out,
so
yeah.
my kids did not take that.
But again, if it's flyers or training for the SROs or whatever, that would allow them to then, oh, you know, this kid's at risk, I now know how to talk and approach them. It's not a new burden on their job, but I think it would allow them to do it better. And I have a brochure of what it looks like, just so you can recognize.
Yeah, additional training for the charges we have already.
Brochures are waiting. I know, but you know what I mean, like, it'll be, again, it could even just be the social media thing, right? I don't know that I'd recognize fentanyl if I saw it.
Well, no, because it comes with
And
something.
everything.
No, I know, but that's just it, it's just to say, I mean, it's not, I don't know that it would be in a sealed package of Skittles, right? But it would be in some other
I
container.
think you'd be amazed at how good they are.
Okay.
That's, yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Scary.
Another thing we could do is if we took the approach of leveraging all the footage and the occasional interview of the police that we can. We have our youth advisory committee and we coupled that with the ability to get PSAs written. They would know how to communicate to the kids, right? Because when I was in high school, if someone handed me a flyer, you know, what was first lady back then?
Nancy Reagan and Dare, yeah,
Yeah, what, I can't remember the tagline.
just say no.
Just say no, I mean, we just laughed at that, right?
Yeah.
We threw the garbage, but if the kids that we have on this committee, that could be something we could task them with to help build these PSAs, because I've seen them do some amazing stuff. Not in this area, but other types of commercials and stuff like
I
that.
would still advocate for starting earlier in the high school, the
Well, but they could,
late elementary.
no, I'm saying that they could help
Yeah.
do that
I'm
across the board.
following. I think it's a great idea. Be a good project.
So I just looked up, the state of Oregon roughly is gonna receive about $600 million from this. And 45% the state keeps, 55% goes to local jurisdiction. So that's about 270 million that the state's for themselves.
We should be asking what they're doing with that money.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people too.
Eastbound question.
Keith, would you like to weigh in on this subject?
I'm obviously, I'm flexible with what we do. I'm supportive of banking it for another year, or I certainly like the idea of the women's shelter, supporting that part of it, whatever we've given in the past. Certainly Justice Center.
That's allowed, we could do that right now. It doesn't take too much
That'd be
away.
awesome.
But I'd like to explore some of these other things too.
I think given that,
I'd really wanna know what kind of programs they have before, that are opioid based before. So I don't know about. I'm in favor of giving the money. I know we didn't have it in our budget this year. I just don't know if this is the right way to go about making up for that. Maybe it is, but I need to know more.
I like your idea of giving the youth advisory committee a 10 grand to.
Yeah.
You know, again, we don't have that much money in the budget, but if we say, well, we're gonna invest in creating messaging for 10 grand or what's the thought?
It is, I agree. But just on your comment, I'm just thinking about the back of that presentation that the Family Justice Center did. And if you believe their stats, which I've been asking around and they said they're accurate, you know, 90% of the kids ending up homeless are coming out of these abusive situations, they're coming out of foster homes. And that's a lot of prevention right there. It's like it's not just prevention of the drug stuff, it's prevention of the factors that are causing it. So I would argue that's fair, yeah.
so I would suggest, if Family Justice Center qualifies, and since we weren't able to budget, we could, you know, figure out a small amount for them. And then B, bank some of it while we do some research on potential already made programs for schools and a media marketing type thing. And maybe there's already a company that's doing this kind of stuff.
And the mental health. thing.
That makes sense.
A lot for 30 grand.
Well, yeah, that's what I say, that's, we need the information, right?
Stretch of that real thin.
No, I mean, those are just like, we need the
Yeah.
information to determine what's gonna be the biggest, best use.
So we come back again with more information for the city council.
Well, the only problem I have with the MHRT person is we talked about. And we've already budgeted for that, and that is in the budget to support that. And so, if we're not gonna, if we don't wanna do the ongoing operations, then that kind of goes against that, but versus doing some special above and beyond.
I think that's just a timing issue though, because when the MHRT program started. We had already started receiving this funds. We could have made the decision back then that this is gonna fund that. I mean,
No, that's a one time. For that position as of right now, right?
the MHRT.
Yeah. Or is that an
It's
ongoing? Okay.
Yeah, so.
We've already paid about 25,000 a year on tax. 27.
So again, this would only, if we chose to do that. That's an ongoing, this could fund it for 10 years and then what? What funds it, you know, if we, that's just moving the money around, right? Then it frees up something, general fund to pay for something else, but then at the end of the opioid, we have to figure out how to keep funding that.
And it sounds like that's almost using the entirety of what we receive yearly.
I think what the needs advocate for is that's one of the things we consider. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Is there a need like the MHRT to increase the hours services? Is there any talk of that?
Yeah, I know I've talked about it before. We have limited hours down here in South City, it's 1 to 11, 4 days a week. That clinician rotates between Taggart 12th and then ourselves. We knew that was the biggest impact was a 1 to 11, but we've also learned that day shift, early morning, we're seeing a lot of this mental health, and so we're relying on the county. Unfortunately, who's cutting back and just eliminated their team. So there's
Wow.
burden on some of the other agencies around here. Bolton is talking about possibly looking at a second. I don't know if they're gonna lift that all by themselves or if they're gonna ask for assistance because of some of that. So I guess, yes, to answer your question along it.
I mean, if it was being used to increase, to not pay for what we're already doing, but if there was a need for an increase of that it could cover for the next 10 years, and then of course you'd have to figure out how to continue funding it, but that tomorrow problem, I guess.
So by part of MHRT, that program, that it was that grant between the Tiger and the city's got help on that position. That came from SHS dollars, that support palliative services. So we just had,
You're thinking of something else. Right,
I think that was right.
is that right?
yeah, that's right. So the
Sorry.
money, Metro has their SHS tax, we use the county, and then they grudgingly have given it out to a few of these programs, or like in Clackamas County, they funnel a lot more to cities for these programs. And we just had another SHS work group meeting last night, and the proposed governance structure is a new governance body for the funding of all those programs. That's going to include 2 mayors from each county. So we'll have more of a say in how those funds get distributed, because the argument the mayors have been making is cities are feeling the impact of us, granted Sherwood not as much as other cities, but like Beaverton, the cities that have big transit centers are seeing the most. And some of that funding needs to go direct to cities so they can deal with their piece of it. So there's opportunity down the road, kind of to your 10-year question, that we might be able to eke out some additional funding to
Yeah.
SHS.
Yeah.
So.
So what additional information do we need in order to vote on this or to get a?
What does that education program look like and what does it cost? What does a marketing media, what would that cost?
Okay, do we want the youth though to weigh in on the educational things that?
Say they need to have buy-in to this type of a program too. We wouldn't necessarily want to impose something on them, I don't think.
Give them an assignment with a due date.
Yeah.
Graded.
Yeah, the assignment is look at them and find one that resonates
I think-
or
I think it's a multi-step process. I think initially it's just the rough budget numbers, what we need to budget for, and what does that look like? And then, once they'll get the kids in place and get first meetings under their belt, we can talk to them about it.
I mean, unless we think we're gonna do a 180 on the filming of videos, we could kickstart that ahead of time. If we think that we're gonna not do that because
We could get it going and turn it over to them to later date.
And if I understand this correctly, the marketing piece is not gonna be necessarily an ongoing $25,000, $30,000, $10,000 hit annually. It's gonna be, we're gonna get it up and built. And then I guess I envision that we should be able to build on it
Yes,
as we grow. I mean, we need a lift. We need
Yeah.
somebody to come in and kind of just
You
build a
need them to-
platform for us to go.
they'll design the bones for you.
Probably look at about 15,000.
Yeah, and I have no idea. I mean, I'm just. Yes.
You're probably close.
yeah, you get some initial professional content and structure around it. Your marketing spend on your socials can vary depending on how much you have to spend. And then, yeah, then it's just a matter of, okay, your officers or SROs, whoever your designated people are, can add,
And I bet this,
every couple of months, they can film a new segment or something and throw it out there.
If you stay within the zip code and marketing on the social media, it's ridiculously cheap.
Yeah, it is.
and I bet that somebody's not gonna be reinventing the wheel. I bet there's somebody out there who's created content like that before.
I really like the idea of our kids
Yeah.
creating content for our kids. Kids are gonna tune into that much more than
You have to get the right kids.
than we did to Nancy Reagan back in the eighties.
The usage report also identifies which cities use their money for marketing. So that falls on me at the first step.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, call some of those media campaigns right there, Medford, Grants Pass.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, they've got a.
Good point.
And is the Justice Center something you want us to look into?
And it's
Find out how they're doing it over there. Yeah.
Cause I have ideas for you, Craig.
I'm not on the page of having the kids do social media. But you guys, I'm
Yeah.
one voice.
I would be more in favor of them coming up with a plan of action if that is something that they're passionate about, not necessarily doing the campaign. Be my.
I don't think I want the liability of the kids being the ones being on camera and all that stuff. Also, we have to keep in mind the kids that are gonna be on our youth council are not probably running with the crowd of people we're trying to reach closer in the same school.
So just a quick Google, there's 7 or 8.
Unless the world has changed greatly from when we all went to school.
Yeah, just from a quick Google though, there's 7 or 8 already packaged things, and part of the assignment might be. Look at the DEAs, look at the Athena forum, look at them and just say, that one is the best, and we get that and try it for a year.
But I sort of like Renee, wanna ask if this is something they're interested in. In other words, not imposing, here's your.
You have to go
Tapping,
through this, yeah.
tapping into their passion.
Yeah,
What they wanna add.
I know my niece sat on their city council, youth advisory. And the assignment they were given was bullying in schools, and she says like, everybody, that's not something we wanted to be doing, but that's what they were handed to do. And so she quit.
Yeah, I'd be hope, well, it's off a topic, never mind.
Would ask Trevor.
Huh?
Ask Trevor what he thinks.
Are you assuming he's gonna be on the youth advisory board already?
Well, no, he's just a student leader who would apply. And I can't imagine him not applying for that.
So we'll check with the Family Justice Center. I'll do a little research on some PSAs
And cost and structure.
Maybe circle back.
and we'll circle back.
Okay. Call that the grants pass.
That work?
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anybody have any other comments? Awesome. We will go ahead and move on to item 2 over. This advisory board update. You need a second to get set up.
Use my profile.
So, yeah, what I would envision. If he's gonna be doing some sort of like a goal setting session, where they asked their ideas, and they get out with a strategy to attack, is what I would like to see happen, that's.
You're gonna maybe an in-house.
Ready?
Yep.
All right, we're on to item 2 on our agenda tonight, which is Police Advisory Board update. And we actually have our police advisory chair, correct?
No, just a member.
Just a member.
Just a member.
Just a member, former chair.
Never,
Yeah.
no just.
I think you're the founding father member.
One of 3 that's from the
Second, phones. Awesome.
The slightly older but much wiser.
Sure.
There you go.
Sure.
Anyways, take it away, thank you.
Doug and Keith, in your honor, I made this a 4-slide presentation. What? Down.
My honor, what?
I know you guys like to get to the point, so.
Usually falls asleep on slide 3.
Transparent?
For, I think everybody knows Chris West here. He's been a member of, do you everybody know Chris? Okay. So obviously, one of the things we've been talking about is, long-term sustainability within public safety within the city. And it's been an ongoing conversation, even with my predecessor, of what that could look like potentially down the road. How it can be funded, what are the options, and what does that give us? As we are sitting in a budget that's put us at a crossroad, that we probably need to have a further discussion about that. This is a good time to talk about some options that are out there. So I presented this to the Police Advisory Board probably 6 weeks ago or so. At that time, they voted to bring it forward to have a discussion with you. And I'll let Chris talk on that here in a minute, but I wanted to give some framework as to what this potentially could look like, what that means for us, and then I'll hand it over. So one of the things that we talked about, and you've heard for a long time, and actually in front of you, you have a sheet of 22 cities in the state that have either a fee and or levy that support public safety. Some of them are standalone, some of them connect with fire departments, some of them connect with public works. It's really dependent on what people are looking for. I think for us right now, at least in speaking with the Police Advisory Board and in their agreement, a fee was probably the best structure that was tied to our, and I call them water meters. Is that the correct term? Yep. Okay. So there's 2 numbers, and these are not in concrete. These are just numbers that were put out there because they seem to justify kind of where we are and where we need to be. Obviously, those could change if we need to. But you can see, 1250 right now brings in just over 1,000,014 brings in, 1.28. And I'm gonna get down to some of the challenges that we have here. As you all know, 38% of the PD is out of the general fund, and that continues to happen. Biggest concern that we have, obviously, and it's been laid out nicely over the last few weeks with the budget committee meetings, is costs are up and revenues down. Technology is going to continue to rise for us. It's the biggest challenge we have in law enforcement because we just don't have any way to cap it. I have no way to cap the radios. I have no way to cap WACA. I have no way to cap anything that we need to utilize. So we have to be creative. You compound that with negotiations. We have 3 associations within the city that we continually negotiate with. It's cyclical. We don't get to negotiate and then deal with it 5 years later. It's just gonna be an ongoing deal. So, as you see in in front of you, some of those other cities that you can see, they have anywhere from 1250 to, and actually, I don't think I have it on here, but, Sherwood's up to 40, not Sherwood. Gresham is up to, I believe, $43. But they have a whole host of things that they incorporate in theirs.
They also have, they have their own fire department too.
Well, there's that, yeah. That all being said, this 1250 is all based off of 72 or 7,256 residential water meters and then 1,334 EDUs. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the EDUs are essentially just multi-dwelling, so apartment complexes, so that if there's an eightplex, it's 8, so that it's equitable across all residents or all people that are living here.
What about commercial?
That's what I was gonna ask.
So that we are working on that. That one is a little trickier, just I've learned a lot. There's SD, EDUs. things like that. There's a lot of acronyms and we're trying to figure out what's the most reasonable and equitable way if we came across that.
I think that's important. If we do that, we'd have to take this to the voters, but if we do it, I mean, we have a lot of calls that go to our commercial areas.
Yes, yes, we do. Did you want to
Yeah,
add to that?
no, I think the commercial side, there's a couple different routes you can go, either from a flat fee to the commercial side with the suites. You could base it off their water meters, you could base it off of ESUs. You're gonna get some larger businesses, so that's what we're pulling.
Plus our trips.
Trips is another route you could go. I just wanna make sure we can do all that with our billing system. So it's a little bit different than just a flat fee. So, but yeah, you're right, Keith, on the trips. That's one thing we talked about.
So with that, that combined number here at 7256, obviously we know that's gonna continue to grow. It gives us a platform to build on as Sherwood grows if we need to. Sherwood West will continue to have that ability. 1.8 and 1.2 is roughly 7 to 8 officers. What it continues to grow is this number, average officers, 167,000 a year, and a supervisor's basically $250,000. So as I talk about the costs of our equipment, our materials and services, this is one that we just can't ignore. Bodies are gonna be what we can't get rid of, that we have to sustain. This potential proposal that we're talking about is just that, it's just sustaining our level of service. These numbers do not give us any room necessarily to add additional staffing. Because we also know that, as I talked about, we have to absorb all of this in the next 2-3 years along with the increases. So this just keeps us, for lack of a better word, kind of flatline in the ability to continue to do business as we are right now. As we know, the challenge is when to go. We know that May is never a good time because of the.
Not necessarily true.
Well,
You're suggesting.
Here's our challenge is that we have to have 50% of the voters. And historically, when I look back, best we ever did was 49. So if we don't meet that threshold, then it doesn't pass. So.
Must be 50%.
Yeah, so that's, yeah, I mean, ideally May would be great because it's kind of that downtime, but we have a big hurdle that was put in our place.
Well, have we ever hit 50% in and off November?
And then,
Doesn't matter though.
Well, it doesn't matter.
It's just the May.
Okay.
yeah, it's just the May, November, it doesn't matter what the turnout is. Obviously, last year, I think we hit incredibly high numbers the last election cycle. Yeah,
Sure.
so obviously, the question is, you know, the priority that we have, when is it gonna be? And I know there's never a good time. I get it. I understand the fact that, you know, we got a lot of challenges out there with sustaining cities and governments and everybody has their hand out, but more importantly, everybody tends to prioritize their needs. And I think that we need to step up at this point. We've done a fantastic job. When I say we, city council, not only current but past, has alleviated any fee or levy for so long because of the management that we've taken and the care that we've taken. But it's just unfortunate. It just seems like everybody is at that crossroad. It's not unique to Sherwood. I'm listening to chiefs and sheriffs and the cuts they're making, and the impact it's gonna have. And so I guess at the end of the day, the question is gonna be, what is the kind of public service we want here?
A question on the funding model, since I think you're proposing a fixed rate.
Yes.
So like with property taxes, we get at least a 3% bump a year, because we're 550 and growth on top of that.
You can do a levy.
You go forward 4.5. With this model, you don't get that bump. The only thing you get is growth, new meters, right?
Doesn't matter.
Wouldn't it be subject to our 3% raise every year we can?
I'm not done with the question.
Oh, sorry, I'm just talking on the side.
I know you're, That's why I told you. Anyways, how are other cities dealing with that? Because, you know, over time, you still have all these other impacts that start whittling away at your budget again. I'm just curious if they have strategies to deal with the fact that there's no CPI or anything attached to that.
Yeah, you're right. I think, that's a great question, because I'm not sure.
Raise our fee.
I think we're uniquely, to
3%.
Doug's point, we have the
Yeah.
ability to raise it. Obviously, whether or not that stays with inflation is always gonna be the
Yeah.
question. Levies, we know, they raise it accordingly every 5 years to catch up or to get ahead. And so, I think there's probably mechanisms in place. I haven't dug that deep into some
I
of
was just
this.
curious what the other strategies are.
Yeah.
Obviously, we can raise it to 2%. Lower to where the cap is. I think it's- But I'm just kidding.
Mhm.
If you're gonna build something new, you might as well build it in.
Could we put language in there to just adjust to the CPI?
Yeah, you could.
Then we don't need to worry about,
The 2% thing.
For the fee,
yeah.
you're not talking levy, right?
Correct, just for that.
I'd rather do that.
Fee.
I'd rather do the flat fee
Additional
first.
CPI increase.
Is it legal to put that money for the first few years into an investment fund or something so that it's growing? Or is that not legal to do?
I mean, it's pretty much gonna be invested when it comes in the door. We have our allocated money, but anything additionally we take in.
Well, isn't the purpose of taking it in? is
To spend it.
Spend it on our employees?
If that fee covers a 2 to 5 year period, right, then theoretically, it's like, well, for the first part.
In year one, you might be able to earn some interest
Yeah,
or
we
something.
may be able to earn interest and it may get us ahead for year two, you know what I mean? And so I'm hoping that. Again, we can have some of the money do some work.
Can we?
because-
Maybe, these seem like tangential parts of the conversation. We haven't had the main part of the conversation yet.
Yeah.
Like worrying about how we're gonna raise it when we haven't decided if we're gonna do it yet.
Well, I'm just trying to understand structures before we get to.
Are we done with the presentation? Are we going into?
No, I want that. I know I've talked a lot, but I really wanted to hand it over to Chris, because this is.
So, as was mentioned, I've been on the police advisory board since inception with two other people. And during that 10 years plus, early on with, Jeff, each time we did a staffing study, we talked about, we're gonna have to do this. The previous Sherwood West discussion, we talked about the lag in money coming from that versus the service that was gonna have to be provided. And that hasn't changed. The good news is that you haven't had to do this before. You've been providing the level of service that the citizens love with regards to public safety. And now they expect that. So that's the catch-22. This is no different, and I was involved with both the school district bond and levy. They were able to do stuff for a long time before they hit that wall. The climate today is different. And nobody can predict what the climate is today. I'll just be, to state that. So when we had the discussion at the last police advisory board, we talked about the amount, and basically where we came down is we thought it should be all about maintaining and sustaining the current level of service that citizens expect. We also talked a lot about the apartment complexes and how they are in this because they need to contribute to the service. We talked a little bit about industrial, but we didn't understand, just as the city's struggling with. And we talked about fee levies, bond isn't really this, but I think from our perspective with what we knew 5 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago, the fee made the most sense because of the ability to increase it without going out again. So that's where we landed, and it was unanimous from those that were at the meeting.
So Chris, I'm just curious, in your day job life, what would it take, and then you can explain what your day job life is, because I couldn't try to explain that to the group. What would it take to have a successful campaign, education wise, timing wise? Thoughts?
Okay, so my day job is I have a consulting firm that is now based in Tigard that does government affairs, public affairs. And it's now mine as of a year and a half ago. But the old firm, PacWest Communications, we've been involved in over 300 campaigns, elections with a 90+ percentile. And like I said, we're involved in both the bond and the levy with the school district. I'm currently retained with the city of Tigard on their challenge to get a bond to rebuild their PD and public works. And that's likely to go in May. We are a firm believer in research. Normally I would say, you need to do polling. You need to see where you're at. Two reasons why I don't think, if the decision is to go this November, that makes sense. It's bad time to do polling. It's summertime. Nobody does any polling during summertime because the results are not worth the money you pay. And the council will need to make a decision in August, I believe, or early September. I can't remember when. Whether to refer this.
I think it's August.
August to refer to the ballot. So, there's two things, two parallel tracks. One is the ability that the city can do in education. And the PD needs to pick up their game and talking about what they're doing and what their challenges are. Just turn it up.
That can only be education on a city.
But it's talking,
Yeah.
it's communicating with voters about the service they're getting. Just like the Crime and Chronicles and that, just pick that back up and maybe pump it up a little bit, because PD being in front of the citizens is critical. The city can also start talking about the budget and the challenges and what the impact to sustaining the public safety service. Do not talk police, guarantee in polling, you talk about public safety. That's key. And you could do a mailer in October.
Okay. Not the city, a PAC or
The
something.
city could do a
You can do
mailer.
it just an educational mail.
Educational mailer. And my guess at the cost to the city, based on looking at three of four and 4 of 4 voters, the most active voters. It's probably in the range of 4,000 households. And the cost would be $300 to $3,500 to do a mailing. So that's what the city could do in total education. Then, question, Doug?
Well, it's more of a general question. It feels like we're talking about how we're going to do this when we
Before we
haven't
just-
yet talked about whether we're going to do that.
All right.
But I don't know, I don't want to stop you, but I also want to make sure we have time for
Well,
discussion.
let me just add the other track real quickly, is to have a Sherwood Public Safety Political Action Committee. which would require some leadership. Usually those are from council members and business leaders. And money would need to be raised to do a couple mailers and maybe some social media. I can talk about the budget and stuff, but that's what would need. Whether this would prevail, I have no idea what politically is gonna happen between now and November. And nobody does.
And we can't use the Friends of the Sherwood Police for that,
Foundation.
the foundation. They can't, okay.
So that's would be how it would be done if the council chose to refer.
And that's for the November ballot.
Correct. And you're really looking at November 26th if it fails, or if you want to wait.
You're making assumptions.
Yes, I am.
Well, Doug's right, before we do anything to talk about it. So let's have a conversation.
Oh, yes.
So. Ask a couple questions, then I have something to say. I'm done. Right, so let's assume we don't do this. 2 years go by and our next budget looks similar to this one and we have to cut 8 people or something in that neighborhood. How many of them would be police officers? And you can't promise, but
I can't promise
Yeah,
that.
but-
We would definitely have to look at the police department this time around. Otherwise, you're gonna run into closing community service stuff down. And because you don't have enough people in those buildings to keep them open, so, because we don't have enough staff that in those buildings, that's what we ran into this time. I mean, you you cut the field house, you're cutting, they only have.
we got library, we got field house.
They're either looking at the library, police, or parks is where you could be looking at.
Well, that's compounding, because if you cut a field house, you're also cutting revenue.
Right.
So same for the art centers, so.
Right.
Just side note, another reason we
Yeah.
can get to break even.
So- I mean, how many people on council here would vote for a budget that cuts sworn officers? I wouldn't. I would cut everything else in the city before I cut that.
Yeah.
So to me, this feels like a money changing exercise. We're not really passing this to fund police. We're passing it to fund those other services because those are the things that we would cut if we didn't pass this. And so to me, it feels like if we go to the voters and ask for money, let's ask for money for the things we're actually asking money for. Which, as we all just said, wouldn't be police.
Well, okay, let me push on that a little bit, Doug, because these are very expensive enforcement, right? And I understand that, but if we say, hey, we're not gonna have the mental health services 20 hours or 8 hours a day, or it's gotta go down to 4 because we can't have, you know what I mean? Like it may be a reduction in services without a reduction in
People.
yeah, people, or it may even just say, hey, yeah, we're gonna have to outsource some of these things. Because we can't do without a permitting department, right? Or something like that, you know what I mean? Like, it can't be, hey, we're gonna shut everything down except our police department, because it's just not. That's not practical either, right? We can't.
Yeah,
do
but there's a
that.
lot between here and there.
Yeah, but I, like, the person who runs the field house, you can get 3 of those for what you could get a police officer for, right? And so I don't know that that's a fair, it's a.
I
strong
think what Doug's getting at though, I mean, you're kind of taking the extremes. of
Yeah.
that, but the fact is the money is fungible. And even with this levy, still a significant portion is coming out of the general fund. And, future council could decide, we're gonna prioritize something else besides PD, so now, I mean, this is hypothetical. That now that all this levy is just, replacing other levies, so Doug has a point. But I wanna hear more arguments. I'm generally in favor of doing this, but I think timing is important and public education is important, polling is important. Because if it fails, it's a lot harder to come back from that.
Can you scroll up so we can see the delay means what?
I'm in favor, just to be clear, I'm in favor of doing a general services levy for the city or fee or whatever we want, however, I don't care. I don't care. It's going to the voters either way. I don't care if it's a levy or a fee. I'm in favor of asking the voter for something if it's correctly positioned in an honest way, which is general services that are covering not just police, but also library, but also communities, because that's what it really is going to happen.
Well, we're experiencing that potentially with the county right now on library services, because they want to raise the levy rate and then limit their general fund contribution.
Right, but if labeling it that way drops it 20% in polls, or the likelihood that it passes.
I don't care. I'm about, because to me, honesty is more important.
I know, but the result of being able to pay, do our union negotiations and being able to keep the officers that we have and all of that, I don't know that I'm willing to put that on the chopping block for that,
I'm just.
when it's all fungible, right?
One thing here, and this is to your point, Doug, I 100% hear what you're saying, but I think what we forget is that the PD does not function without IT, without public works, without HR, without all the components of that go into this. And we have the city attorney, we have finance. They're all an integral part, because if all of a sudden we start stripping them away, the PD can't just function alone, especially with the way things are. I mean, I don't know how many people I'm calling on a daily basis that are not police specific, but they make the world go round for us. And so I hear what you're saying, but they're such a huge support system for how we're just the base of the city in a lot of ways, but man, we don't function without them. If my computer goes down, I gotta call Brad or Mark or somebody, or I gotta call David because something's screwed. I mean, we're kind of dead in the water. We're in a weird place now because of how much we rely on our support.
Doug's talking more of the amenities. The amenities
Yeah,
aren't
we're-
required.
Yeah, but just for the messaging.
Yeah.
We're public safety is a big net that we're casting citywide. Public safety does include all of these components that we don't necessarily talk about, because I can't go out and do my job unless I have that support back there. So I understand what you're saying. We don't want to be deceptive, because you're right, it will help. It will help with an IT person or a finance person or a public works person that can bring out barriers in the ice storms and things like that. So
To me, it's more of if we didn't pass this, the people that are more likely to get cut are parks, community services,
But police would have,
library.
my budget, police would absolutely be cut if we don't have additional revenue.
We don't have what?
If we didn't have some mechanism bringing in more revenue.
Sure.
If 2 years from now, we come back here and have a shortfall and we have to make cuts, I'm cutting everywhere in my.
But the point being, you're cutting everywhere. All the cuts wouldn't come out of the police department.
Absolutely.
So calling this a public service fee is a bit dishonest, and that's really a general services fee that's covering all of these different things.
Forest Grove.
That allows us to not cut across the
Does a
board.
general service levy. Actually, I'm not sure. what
So I'm in favor of it, I'm just not in favor of calling it public services.
Just from my point of view, I also totally believe in integrity and honesty around these, because going out and saying it's just public safety, or I think that's part of the reason you say don't call it public safety, call it police.
No, don't call it public safety, don't call it police.
Don't call it either.
No, call it public safety.
That's
not
like,
police.
yeah, so we're, that's what I thought you said, so. Because I think at the end of the day, the voters get very disenfranchised when you say one thing, you do another.
And there's a lot of elements of public safety, as the chief was commenting. You know, having maintained parks is a form of public safety. Because if you're not maintaining the trails and the.
Pothole. Yeah, it's a good point. I think, but that's the education. To understand what things.
Yeah.
Maintaining roads, that's a form of
Yeah,
public safety. If you're not maintaining sidewalks, that's a
Yeah.
form of public safety.
And
You're not having enough staff in the library to watch what's going on, that's a form of public safety.
Yeah, and I don't see it as disingenuous or dishonest. I literally see this as a marketing thing, right? Trying to explain the budget and all the buckets and all that in a flyer is hard.
Or on
Right.
social media,
Or
let's
on
tell you
social
about.
media,
I'm
yeah.
not suggesting.
No, so that's why I'm saying that public safety and bringing in these other things. Yes, it benefits these other departments, but, and I would say I'm generally for it, and frankly, I would rather do the 14.5 one versus the 12, just because it's the difference in $2, if that gets us ahead and gets it so that we can build up more funds to have more down the road without having to raise it, because we can only do the 3%.
2%.
Or 2%, sorry, but we can, you know what I mean, that we've all complained about how that's not cutting it with inflation. And I don't see inflation going down due to what's, happening, so
I'm agreeing with the 40, if we're gonna do it, let's do the higher amount.
yeah.
Why is it we not considering a levy?
You have to go every 5 years and have that revote or not.
Something we should pull on to.
I mean. They have those thumbs down.
So I appreciate this slightly, that to actually use of this of being of value, it would be important to have, so what the permanent tax rate is for each of these communities.
I'm sorry.
On what the city tax rate is in each of these communities. Other than that, it's, much.
Oh, yeah, like Grisham's, their filming rates lower than ours. Yeah. Versus Beaverton, which is a lot.
I mean, Tigard's is $2 and change. King City's under $1. Gresham is a little more than $1. Something horrific in Gresham.
So if there's enough in favor of such, what realistically, sorry, Dan.
Just one more question. This specific to what we've been presented today, this would be in addition to the almost 40% from the general fund. Is that correct? This wouldn't
Take the place of,
interchange of any of that money? It used to be on top of what is already budgeted to the police.
Oh, I'm not given, this is not as a comment, this isn't raising for me, if we do something, be it a levy or a fee, it's not, hey, we're now putting another $1 million into PD.
No, it's
That's
so
what I
it's
meant.
staying on current level, so in a sense, it would free up general funds for other
that's what you're asking.
uses.
Yeah,
Right.
like, is the police then of the fund, general fund gonna be at 50% because this is added to that? Or is it like, are we getting close to, I know it's gonna change, but like,
It increases.
okay.
all fungible.
Yeah, we're getting.
Well, I know that, but that's what I'm wondering if.
It would be maintaining current operations, so
Across the
revenue's
board.
gonna go up. We're not saying we're gonna add a bunch of new positions, so revenue goes up, the cost of their expenditures is. It's gonna go down a little bit, so it might be only 34% of the general fund or 30%.
So
As you explained, this is not to add new staff, it's just to maintain current operations with the state of the. World economy, the federal economy, and just the uncertainty and. Yeah, 2 years, it'd be interesting.
Well, and maintaining our level of service could, over time, mean adding a position too, as if the city's growing, right? Maintaining our service means we have X amount of officers per population, if, something like that. So.
Sure. November is a massively heavy lift.
And we
And I'm
have,
not, I'm being modest in my opinion on, you're at mid-June.
well, and we have a WCCLS levy that they want to increase at 50% with no additional services. Similar thing's gonna happen on the police levy. The SHS levy, there's gonna be a lot, it's gonna be a huge.
So the only
deal.
one that I know of is the library that affects the city.
That's on the ballot for Sherwood.
That's on the ballot for Sherwood.
That's true, but I'm talking about voter sentiment when they're. Yeah.
Don't disagree.
Yeah,
What happens in Salem with transportation and $2 billion of new taxes and fees will be up here too.
Yeah, we talked about that last
Yeah,
night.
so,
First and foremost on our road.
impact effect, because we do partner with them, but you're right.
it's the non-incorporated is what that's for. So, right. So the other thing that when I was sitting at police advisory, that I did the math on. And when I went home to explain to my wife what we talked about, because she always asks, is how much is this gonna cost me? And at 14.5, it's $174 a year. And to me, for maintaining services, whether it's PD, parks, anything, versus what I see on my tax bill for the levy for the school district in one big chunk, $174 is
No, but it's just that it's stacked on.
No, I don't,
It's a
but,
death of a thousand cuts, right?
but that's an assessment our household did. What's it gonna cost to feel that we're maintaining the public safety value of the city?
I think, I don't disagree with you on what the proper education and polling to inform the structure in it. I think it would pass, but I agree with Keith, though, not a lot of time
No,
to get
there's
that
not.
done right now.
There's not.
I mean, I know waiting till November 26th might not be ideal, gives us actual time to do polling off cycle, off of summer.
We implement it through a charter amendment.
Say again?
We implement it through a charter amendment. You wouldn't have the 50% threshold on that.
It essentially would be an exception to Article 47, is that what you're saying?
So yes,
I like the idea,
Just-
probably.
yes, the answer is yes, you could do a charter amendment in May. And specifically call out a fee as part of the charter amendment.
But that 47 says any new fee has to be voted on, and if it's in a May election, it has to be 50%.
But the charter amendment would change that one.
I feel like this is more dishonest than calling it public safety.
If we
I
went
like the
out,
creativity though.
if we went out in November and if for some reason it failed, we could still go back out in the next November,
It's
correct?
just much harder after it's already failed.
Normally I'd say yes, but the climate, the crazy climate we're in, people may forget and the situation totally changed.
I mean, Tiger went out for their first police one that failed and went back out and
They would have.
educated better. A year?
Yeah, it was just a year.
But I think it probably failed the first time because they didn't educate enough.
Yeah, that's my fear between now and September, November.
Yeah, you would have to.
If we did a fee, and I'm not saying I'm supporting a fee, but if you did a fee, you could also put it on a ballot so that if steps, so it's a lower amount, in one calendar year, and it goes to a higher amount after, going forward. Or
Building steps into it,
Yeah,
just thinking out loud because it's so fresh and new. We haven't really been able, to digest and think of all the potential.
my brain goes to, if I see it on the ballot the second year, I think to myself, they just asked us for money. I thought this, I may not even remember if it passed or not, right?
Right.
And so it feels like I just voted yes on this last year and now they're asking for more money. It makes me angry, right? I mean,
It's important to, and I believe most folks around here would comment that we are fortunate in our community in that by and large, we are very pro public safety.
Yes.
And we want to have good amenities and safe community, and so that is working for us, even though we haven't done any polling in a while. But that's what we all believe still. And I still refer to Sherwood as, and one of the nicknames is Copland. Because we have a lot of public safety professionals that live in our community that work somewhere else.
So the only thing I'd say, and I know we're short on time, you wouldn't do education too early. Because you wanna focus it in a time when people are gonna remember what they're voting on.
It's prepping the message.
It is,
And
and that's the
reading them.
message prep, and without polling, that's the roll of the dice that we're talking about.
Yeah, I really think polling is critical.
And doing a charter amendment in May, not a bad idea. There might be a momentum in the community that would prefer a levy, and then you do a levy in May.
Public safety levies rarely fail.
Correct.
And you could do that in May, because that's different than that charter. A levy is different than the fee.
There is value in considering the charter amendment, whenever you do a charter, do it, request a charter amendment, do a charter, in theory, a charter amendment in November. It would, or however you write it, would not be bound by 2% threshold, it could be bound by a different percentage threshold.
It would require additional education, why we're going that route. But you take away the 50% name requirement.
It's also less aggressive. Cause it's based on household value instead of flat rate for everyone.
Per levy.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tiffany.
But the charter amendment doesn't have to be a levy, right? If we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Charter amendment would be.
It would have to be done.
Okay.
Maybe we need to have another meeting.
Out of curiosity, Chris, so did you do a workup on levy? Or do you
Well,
guys?
I talked to my main pollster and both of us flinch with a fee versus a levy. It's just, and I would want to test it, but fees get a bad name because they go, they just, and there was been a bunch of print this last year about all the fees that other cities keep adding on because they don't have the charter provision that we do, and they just jack them up when they need to.
That's good to know.
So,
Yeah.
so if I could make a suggestion between now and our next meeting, if we could get some quotes on, just find out what would the cost be? Just the basic steps without all the detail of what we would need to do to get something to the ballot, which would include polling, education. The non-PAC stuff, obviously, because we'd have to have a.
It's important to have more data for us to make
Yeah.
an informed decision on.
Safe to assume I'm the only one who wants to call this general services and not public safety.
Against that, in favor of that?
But understood.
I think you say within that, which equates to police, you know, you could name things.
We could
But I'd
discuss
like
further.
some information on like a levy, like to get that kind of money that we want out of fee, what would that
Test.
need to be levy per household?
It's not,
or
for me, that's not relevant, but I
Estimated.
understand for others.
Is that based on property values within the city and just?
Yeah, that's on the tax reports from the county, taking value with it.
If you go levy, not everybody would be. That doesn't, people who rent aren't going to be.
Well, their landlords just pass it on in their rent. Everybody pays it one way or another.
See it on there.
The owners will, but that usually gets passed through in their rent. But yeah,
It does, it also for our large box retailers where our police officers spend a lot of time. You know.
Did they take the levy as well?
Which then solves the problem that we were, if we do a fee, we were trying to solve that problem and now. But
Back to doing it every 5 years.
I didn't realize there's.
once we pass it once, it's not gonna,
Yeah,
it's gonna just.
levies and fees, renewals, well, you don't have to renew a fee, but levy renewals are. So unless you really screw up.
Yeah,
I don't think I've ever seen one not.
there was one this year in Washington, I read something about one field.
And for
We have them.
the value of the fee is you vote on it once and it stays forever. That's also a negative if you're a voter. The other negative of the fee is it's after-tax money for a homeowner. If a levy is on your property tax bill with pre-tax money.
Oh, I didn't thought about that.
Well, and you get the lift every year in the automatic 3%. And assessed value, yeah, plus your new growth.
education's gonna be needed though, I mean, I've already heard in the community when they read our articles of 8 FTEs being let go. Well, they just built a bridge and now they're having to let people go.
Oh, that's what we were talking about.
Yeah, which obviously is not understanding the fact that you can't use the bridge money for operations, but
Walls between those funds.
Yeah.
We're 5 minutes after 7 minutes. Everyone okay with the plan? Any other suggestions?
No. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, everybody. We're adjourned. We'll get started in 5 minutes. Thanks, Brad.